Welcome to the GameReady Podcast, where former college and pro athletes share their stories, experiences, and the lessons that shape them on and off the field. From the highs of competition to the challenges of transition, we dive into mindset, resilience, and success beyond sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fan of the game, this is your place to connect, learn, and get game ready for life. Let's get game ready.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GameReady Podcast. We have a special guest, Lisa Richard. She is a certified neurodiversity consultant and a podcast guest speaker, and is an expert in neurodiversity and inclusion. Keynote speaker, founder of Journey to Bloom Consultancy, the Neurodiversity Learners Advisory Chair, Executive Chair Board member. She's the parent of two neurodivergent teenage boys, which she's going to go into. An elite level athlete, in which she's an elite level gymnast, which is the reason why she's on the program, and the creator of Ripe Ideas Framework. It's basically simplifying the neurodiverse learning journey by connecting families, educators, and professionals with the tools and resources they need, which is extremely important. And that's pretty much. She has a list of certifications which you can get from her website, which are very, very detailed, and I'm excited to have her on because we're going to cover a good amount of information regarding her profession, but we're going to really dive into her experience as a college athlete and her experience as an athlete, which is not really the most common experience. Her athletic journey started when she was in like 5 years old. So, Lisa, I'll let you take it away, and then we'll go from there.
Where do we begin? I can share just really quickly about that, how that started so young. So I was in what they called nursery school. We're around the same age, right? We established that the other day.
Yeah.
So I was in nursery school, and there was a young lady, and I cannot remember her name, but she was doing cartwheels we were in a big church up like a couple minutes from our house, and big open area where, you used to run around, play kickball and play all the games. She was doing cartwheels, and I said, I want to learn a cartwheel. And so she taught me a cartwheel. And I went home and I said, Mom, I want to go to this Monday tumbling class that this girl was in. And she's like, well, where and what is this? So I said, she's at Parquette's, and that's all I knew. So my mom talked to the mom, and she signed me up for that class. And that my very first coach ended up being one of my elite level coaches as well. And that was it. 5 years old, and I asked not to go one day. The coach was like, it's okay. Let her stay home, climb in the trees. She might be back. And then I went back. And then the next, 14 years, I was 17 years actually, right? Because all the way through college. So yeah, the next 17 years there I was doing gymnastics.
Wow. Gymnastics is, we had this conversation before. It's one of the hardest sports, and really one of the most demanding sports, both physically and mentally. We're going to talk primarily about your college career, and looking back at your college athletic career. What were some of the most defining moments, both highs and lows, that you would say shaped not only who you are as an athlete, but as a person?
Yeah. Lots of lows, not too many highs for me as a college athlete. We had talked about that. But there were some highs. So there was a time where I did make like this honor roll and was a scholar athlete, and making the honor roll growing up, I missed so much time in school throughout my high school years. I was traveling internationally for the US, or I was traveling nationally for our club team, that I never really focused on academics. It just wasn't my focal point. The Olympics was my focal point at the time. And so that was a high. That was definitely a high when I made the honor roll in college. As an athlete, the the school was really big and I was not really ready, I think, for what was to come. I went to college at 17. I had been injured a lot throughout the later high school years, which kept me out of going to Olympic trials. And then I went to college, but I was really burnt out already. I got there and I went there in part because I had a full scholarship. And then I stayed there because my parents were like, well, you're staying here because you have a full scholarship. And so I really didn't have a choice but to stay. But it was a lot of mental roller coaster. I was injured more than I was healthy. I competed off and on, but more as an exhibition versus as an actual team member that was able to have my score count towards that, which was demoralizing for me, having been such a high level athlete. Teammate drama, coach drama. There was just a lot. Coaches, when I was growing up, coaches would, I guess, have favorites, but I was oblivious to it. I'm still one of those people that I'm like on a need to know basis. But in college, it was a lot more obvious when there were certain teammates that were getting different treatment. I had gone through a lot of just what I would look back on now and say depression, where I really didn't know what that meant at the time. And I would ask for help. I needed to talk through things. And people weren't there for me. My coaches weren't there for me. My parents weren't there for me. My teammates didn't understand me. And as a neurodivergent individual, I now understand a lot of that too, because the way I speak and engage and how I feel, my empath side is I feel everybody, my own feelings and other people's feelings. So that all then came into this implosion, if you will, like throughout college, because I was bringing in everybody's everything as I was trying to navigate being a young adult. Turned 18 while I was at college. And so it was a lot. But how then it led to prepare me for life after sport, the resilience. I mean, I thought I was resilient growing up, but when college, with all of the things that hit, all the injuries, the teammates, the just confusion, losing sense of self and all of that. And because I was such a high level athlete, my identity was wrapped up in that. Well, in college, like I said, I was exhibition more than I was actually on the, competing with my time, my scores counting. I had lost my complete sense of self because I never really knew who I was as Lisa the person. I only knew who I was as Lisa the gymnast, who everyone knew in my hometown. I was in the papers, I was on TV, I was everywhere. And so I completely lost all of that. But sports prior to college, the dedication, the resilience, the time management, the ability to keep things going, it really, really helped to set me up for holding it together while falling apart at the same time. If that makes any sense.
That does make sense. I think a lot of athletes at a certain level, especially in college, they experience that at certain points, where you just get used to holding it together, but you're inside, you're just slowly falling apart. And then the thing that's really holding you together is your identity as an athlete, in my opinion. And when you lose that and you leave, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
And then where do you go from there? But it's made you stronger. So that actually helped you develop into your current career, and actually pointing out and helping you identify what your strengths are and where the origins of what you would consider weaknesses came from, which helps you, gives you a purpose to help people. So that sounds cool. So it sounds like those experiences really helped you prepare for life after sports. Would you say that?
100%. Absolutely. And how you described it, right? My lived experiences and have allowed me to have my current career be what it is. But at the same time, sometimes that's detrimental too, because some people think because you share your lived experience, that you're saying that their experience doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And that's not true. What we're saying is that our lived experience allows us to have a different perspective that we're sharing with you. And we're hoping that you're going to recognize it as well. You might not understand it, but we're hoping that you'll appreciate it. And I think being a college athlete and an athlete just growing up, that resiliency of getting it from the other side, from the coaches of like, do more, do better, do this, and coaches coach the way they coach. I think we talked about this, right?
Yeah.
And now when you meet a child where they are, or an adult where they are, and you work together to solve those problems, everyone benefits. But when you're constantly saying, well, my way is a better way, but the other person doesn't receive or process information that way, or aren't motivated that way, it backfires. And we spend so much time and energy wasted on not listening to one another and not appreciating those differences and trying to kind of fit that square peg in the round hole. And so college athletes, for me, that was a lot of my college career, was trying to fit into somebody else's space, because I was losing that sense of identity and I wasn't great as a gymnast anymore. I wasn't that elite level athlete that had been the first person to do full and back out off the uneven bars before it was even in the code of books. I was the middle to low of the rung at my college team, where I was like one of the top 12 in the country at one point, right? So all of those shifts kept, like you said, kept it together underneath, and have allowed me to then come and have conversations with people like you, right? To talk about, well, you were a football player and I was a gymnast, there's a lot of similarities in terms of the mental toughness, the physical toughness, the emotional components of it, and the nature of how dangerous the sports are.
Yeah, that is. I mean, this is so detailed, and that's why I knew when we had a conversation before we got on here. I love how you're very introspective, and and a lot of times I think people in general, we really kind of ignore that introspection for whatever reason, and we lose out on lessons we can learn from our those negative experiences. That introspection gives us the actual the benefits from those negative experiences, which I think can help some other people. And the reason why we focus this podcast, so we can help some athletes and former college athletes navigate this whole process of life after sports. The transition from being a college athlete to a life beyond sports is, it's a major shift. In some cases, it's a really big challenge. What was the biggest challenge you faced in that transition?
It was my loss of identity. I mean, I left college in a really bad place. I did not know who I was going to be, what I was going to do. And I moved down to North Carolina, and I took on a job as a gymnastics coach for the Durham YMCA. I became their gymnastics director because I didn't know anything beyond my sport. I did. I didn't believe I did, right?
Yeah.
In introspection, I wrote that word down because through burnout 5 years ago, and then through that introspection and unpacking all of that trauma and drama, and realizing that adults weren't there for me when I was actually crying out for help. I couldn't have been more. I used to write poetry, and it was like out there, like, I am hurting. I am confused. I am lost. People read my stuff and they're like, this is so great and deep. But nobody was looking at this simplistic top line of I was in pain. I was lost. I was confused. I was depressed. So for me, the hardest thing, it was the identity. It was all of it. I didn't know how to navigate it. So I went to what I knew. And I ran a gymnastics program. And then I went down and ran a little gym. I was a director of a little gym, which was giving back to the younger athletes for self-esteem building. So back kind of like what you were just describing, right? So, and now I look at it as I'm talking with you, and I think I know why I went from the Y over to the little gym, because it was all about the developmental And the little gym really focuses, and I think my gym in some ways somewhat too, and there's a lot more recreational programs out there now, that you learn about that self-esteem, the balance, the self-confidence, all of those things, the collaboration, the camaraderie, the, engaging with other kids and the play. When I was teaching them, I was able to give them the best part of me, the most fun piece of gymnastics. I that never came to fruition until just now. So thank you.
Yes.
But I was trying to figure out who I was outside of being Lisa the gymnast.
Yes.
And so what did I do? I went and did more of Lisa the gymnast because that's what I knew.
Yeah. So that was a career transition that developed out of those experiences, which goes into the fitness aspect. Did you have any major challenges as far as your ability to stay physically healthy and physically fit?
Yeah. And I would say still to this day, it's kind of like that yo-yo, if you will, not like extensive yo-yo, but I would say, wintertime, it's like the old freshman 15, and then it goes back down like 20 pounds down and then back up. And I am, from a fitness perspective, but when I was coaching, it was great because I was active all the time, right? So I could eat whatever I wanted and do whatever I wanted. And of course, life then changes too as you get older. But I'm not someone that can go to the gym and just lift weights. I've always hated lifting weights. And the way my body is, when I lift weights, no matter if it's low weights, high reps, high weight, low reps, I bulk up. And I literally get like this, like shoulders get real big and like my lats come back. It's like my muscle memory from bars was my best event, but that muscle memory, it's like back in like a heartbeat. And I don't like having those bulky muscles. So, and my 18-year-old will say, Mom, gosh, you don't even lift anymore in your muscles. I can just do medicine ball and my muscles come right back. Wow. So, which is great. Yeah. But I need to do the cardio piece. And that's what I was doing for like in college, 4 hours, like 3 to 4 hours a day. But in private club, it was like 6, 7. In the summer, it was 8.5. So, I had been doing so much in motion that when the weather, like today, it's beautiful. It's almost 60 today in Maryland, but the winter was long this year. And so I really wasn't outside. I have a little stepper that I'll get on for like 15 minutes, but it's different than going for an hour. And what I've learned about myself is I'm not a self-motivated athlete.
Oh, wow.
I am not. And so let me clarify that for like everybody here. Hopefully it'll make sense. I'm not motivated to do athletics. I'm not a self-motivated. So if I have to do the work on my own without either a partner walking with me, or I did a lot of kickboxing for a long time and eventually did it virtually with medicine balls and just like shadow boxing and stuff, but I had to have somebody there pushing me. I know that for me, the only way for me to truly stay in shape is to have either a coach or to have a partner. So a partner walking with me or a coach training me. And from 5 years old, that's what worked for me. Yes. I have friends that go out running. I'm like, no, thank you. It's boring. I don't like it. Even if I have music on, when I go for walks, I even take the dog because I want to have like a companion. So, finding what worked for me or what still works for me, and then giving myself the space and grace to say, okay, I know I'm going to have this up and down and I'm just going to be okay with it because I know I'm going to come back, and I don't let the up go so high that I become unhealthy, but I give myself the space to just deal with the seasonal depression stuff, the anxiety, the knowing that because there are things I'm choosing not to do, which is motivate myself to work out every day or 5 days, that's what's going to happen. And I think that's another thing I've really learned that was really, really challenging life after athletics, right? Like life after sport is I never had to worry about those things because I was always in motion. So it was always just happening. And I always had someone that would motivate me, even on the days that I wasn't feeling motivated. So when you don't have that coach or those teammates that get you and are there to do that with you, that's another huge transition out of college as an athlete, if you're not going to continue to do it after.
It's very huge. And I like, a little bit more of a different terminology. Motivation lasts like it's very finite. It's the discipline. The
Hmm.
discipline is what,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah.
and that and a lot of people have this. The discipline comes from, it's either almost intrinsic, where you automatically, you see the result. You remain disciplined to a certain thing. When you have the discipline coming from your accountability to a coach or another person, that is where I'm thinking you're coming from, and
Yes.
that's a and that's what that's like almost forming like a micro community that actually
Yes.
helps you remain disciplined
Yes.
to what you want to do physically, and exercise as a coach and a trainer. That's one of the main issues, is actually getting that aspect to to translate to people, because motivation is cool. No coach can truly motivate somebody. It is his ability to hold the person accountable and instill a sense of discipline that
Yes.
actually translates to them actually seeing the actual benefit, but falling in love with the process.
Yes. And I love that. I was always in love with the process.
Yes,
and I was always motivated to do it, but I wasn't disciplined to do it on my own. And I recognize that. I've always, and that was, it's just so interesting to me that I recognize that a long time ago. And when my kickboxing coach had her first baby, like she would do virtual, and then she had the baby. I'm like, come on, I don't care. You can have the baby on the bouncer. I just need you there. And she's like, well, what if you just channel me? I'm like, it's not the same. I need you there yelling at me, not yelling at me, but like, come on, you got this. 5 more minutes. We're almost done here. Great job. I need that verbal confirmation and just knowing Big Brother's watching, right? And that's me. I know it. I know that's what I need to stay disciplined. Mm-hmm. And it's a choice. Yes. But it's a choice that I recognize in myself doesn't work without that other person. I will pay you. Yeah. That's how much I know I can't discipline myself. I will pay you to discipline me in a positive way, right? Not in like a rating way, but I need you there to help me be disciplined.
And that is and really, if everyone had that actual outlook, and they really looked within themselves, I think it would be a better place, because just the human experience in general, we all benefit from connection. Mm-hmm. We live longer, we have a better quality of life, and we actually enjoy our lives better just by connecting with people. And the cool thing is, I get to connect with cool people like you, and like several my other guests, and learn even more. And my brain is like going and I'm actually seeing my how I can actually be a better coach just from you saying that. That's actually really cool. And you sound like you navigated it pretty well. What advice would you give other athletes going through that same process, transitioning from being a college athlete to regular life?
I would encourage them to just really sit back and reflect on what are the things you want to keep doing, knowing that you're not going to be doing it at the same intensity as you were doing it before. If you are someone that knows, in order to stay not just physically strong, but also agile and mentally strong, that you need that ongoing activity, and then how much of that ongoing activity. So I learned through my therapist after burnout that even just 10 minutes a day of physical activity, or walking outside and standing outside and doing grounding and just being one with nature. Like, I realized that I have ADHD, but my body knew that being a gymnast was what it needed to stay focused and calm. So my body knew it way before I was diagnosed with it. And then same thing with being outside. Like, I love to work outside. I'm not out there today. I probably could have been. It's probably warm enough by the time we talk, but you will see me do a lot of recording or be on podcasts or meetings, and I'm outside and I'm like, I'm out here. And it's because when I'm in nature, it allows me to just be myself, be calm. I just feel more like me. So figuring out what is it about you that you can continue to do despite not being that college athlete anymore. And if you can't figure it out on your own, it's okay to ask for somebody. I mean, my kids had therapists. I didn't get one. I was in burnout because I had no choice at that point. I'm like, I need to get out of this. I got to start to, be able to move and do things again. But whether it's a therapist, a friend, a teammate, all you need is one person that appreciates you, even if they don't get you, that you can trust without getting triggered by, and try and figure out, let them ask you questions.
Yes.
And reflect on, like, what is it? What makes me really happy? And can I do this even though I'm no longer that athlete? I'm still this person. And I'm saying this and that, right? I am always this person inside and outside. I'm no longer that athlete. So the athlete, I can still be an athlete. I'm just not that athlete.
Very true.
And then taking those things and figuring out how to incorporate them into your life going forward.
Do you still consider yourself an athlete? I know I do.
I do.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm not in shape like I was, but I'm still an athlete.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, cause I think a lot of it is a mentality, and and whether it be a competitive aspect or like loving processes on how to actually get things done and get the result that you want. I think we all. That's why I think athletics is so important for all young people to actually be a part of, because it helps you develop who you are, and it gives you an idea of how to get in love with a process.
Resilience, persistence, and just execution, and success and failure. You don't grow, you grow through what you go through. I think we talked about this when we were talking before, right? And if you don't have failures, you never learn. And if you're not willing to have those failures, you never learn. And I remember my best friend growing up, she had kids long before I did. Like, she had kids in her early 20s, so that her kids are older. And her oldest fell one day, and she's like, "Yeah." And I looked at her, I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Watch, he's not going to cry."
Yep.
And so she taught me a lot about being a mom. And we were both gymnasts together growing up. And that's how I met her, when she was 3 and I was 5. And we talk about some of that, about what are the things that allowed us to keep moving forward versus keeping us stuck.
Yes.
And while that was a parent thing, I also think that came from the fact that we fell on our butts all the time, or our faces, or in other places that was not comfortable. And we had lots of things happen, but we got back up and we did it. Now, she wasn't going to yell at him that he fell, but she knew that if she made it not as big of a deal, then he would get back up and he'd try to walk again. Exactly. And it's those things, as an athlete, you fall down and you get back up and you try again, and you do one trick and then another trick. That's another thing that I think is really important. I was trying to move my business forward a couple of years back, and I was like, why am I getting so stuck? And then I finally recognized, okay, as an athlete, I came in the gym, got a drink of water, I stretched, we ran some laps, we stretched again, we did back walkovers, we did handstands, we did handstand push-ups, we did splits, we stretched each other. We would do a cartwheel, then a round off, then we do drills, and then we would do more drills, and we'd do a trick, and then 2 tricks, and then a combination, and then a part of a routine, and then a routine. And I'm like, so why do I think I need to go into business and make it all happen at once?
Yes.
It's all building blocks. Yeah. So as an athlete, I think about, you as a football player, you guys, I'm sure you guys run, do sprints, do all the little agile stuff. We did a lot of isometric exercises, all of that. And then you do the drills, and then you do passes, and then you do, scrimmages. And when we think about, as an athlete, no matter what sport, a lot of those things still happen. You can drop in whatever sport you did. And then you came back and you did it again the next day. Yeah. And guess what? You didn't start with a scrimmage. Nope. You started again at the beginning with a warm-up. Yeah. And so, that's another big lesson. And I disconnected from that for many, many years. But when that light bulb went off about 7 years ago, I was like, whoa, okay, hold on a minute. now I've reconnected with me as at the core. Now, how do I bring that into what I do as an individual, how I am as a parent, how I am as a career transformation person, how I am as a parent advocate, how I am as I educate people on neurodiversity and what that means and how to engage across them and, all those things. How do I take that? And then how do I take other corporate lessons learned of how I was treated differently and instead of fighting against it, use that introspective, like you were saying earlier, to understand those lessons to then be able to inform others to do better because now they know better.
Wow. I mean, that's extremely, extremely powerful. And, the story of your friend teaching their kid how to be resilient. That's how I saw it.
I love that. Yeah, she did.
Yeah, and she was teaching them how to enjoy the process of learning. And one thing that I've noticed, and even myself, everybody wants to get it right on the first shot. And you're not going to get it right on the first shot. You're going to actually learn more by actually falling and actually, learning through the process of if you want to say failing. It is failing. Failing is not a bad word, so I'm gonna say failing.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, training, for your physical performances were a major part of your life, and I think we kind of covered this. As an athlete, and how have your training habits evolved since leaving college sports? So I think we kind of covered this, but you can go a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, sure. So I think that for me, it's funny things that work after 2 back fractures throughout high school. And I came back from both of them, and then, torn muscles and all sorts of different things, having then 2 C-sections, 1 emergency, 1 planned with my kids. Like my body's been through a lot. And so having to adjust from those things. My first C-section, the doctor's cutting me open and is like, oh my God, I've never seen stomach muscles like this before. My husband's like, can you just get the baby out? He's like, your layers of your stomach muscles are so strong, but that it took like triple the time that it would someone else to recover because she had to cut through so many layers of muscle. And so, while I was out of sport and I was walking, I wasn't sitting there doing crunches and all the stuff and leg lifts and everything. My body's like, resiliency is there. Like I can work out and get back into shape very quickly, but I can also get out of shape just as quickly.
Exactly.
And so, having some of those things at home to be able to do, whether it's the medicine balls or even just stretching, like that's something I lost sight of for a long time, but I'll be 53 this year. And it's a lot to try to just keep a body who's pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded from, way up in the air for so many years. And figure out how to stay in shape, but also be able to move right after you're exercising. So I think that one of the things I've started to do better that is just which vitamins and minerals do I need that my body's not absorbing that need to be absorbed. Finding a health and wellness person that could work with me as an integrative wellness doctor, craniosacral therapy, acupuncture, and then my therapist. I mean, that's truly how mind, body, soul, like I have all the therapists now in different modalities because that's what I need to be able to, after all those years of training. And if you think of it, if you're a college athlete, we didn't have the psychologists in college. We had them in high school, but because of when I trained for US, but, I think they do now. They all have therapists now. And so, when you leave sport in college and you lose all of that community, you've got to find it again. And that was a big mistake for me because I lost myself so much. I didn't even know what I needed and what I didn't. So having those people that are your trusted people. So back to the last question, and I was saying like, write things down about yourself. Also, write things down about the support you had and how that support also helped you reach your goals, because I didn't do that. And if I went back to my younger self, those are things that I'll share with my kids as my older one goes off to college in the fall. One of the things he and I work on now is writing down how you're feeling. He has a sports psychologist and he's been through the ringer, and we've not had him and had him again. And I said to him, the biggest mistake I made with you is letting you not talk with your sports psychologist last summer as you were going through burnout. You needed to be talking to him. We forgot about that mental piece, and it came back to haunt him at a big competition recently. Thankfully, he got back in with his sports psychologist before that happened. But he's going off to college. He'll probably do club swim. Like, he won't be like a Division I, but the schools he's going to will probably do club swim. But teaching him these tools now to keep them going as habits.
Yes.
So you have all these people to hold you accountable, right? To help you be disciplined. But these were also habits that we formed, but they're unconscious habits. And so just guidance for others of not making the same mistake I made is, don't forget about those things that became habits that helped you be happy, helped you stay motivated, helped you be resilient. And the people that supported you in reaching those goals because of those habits, write those things down. And if they're not the people that you had before, find others or get referrals from those that you worked with, so that, because they know you, and allow yourself to continue to work with them, because having those people in your corner is worth that investment financially and personally.
Big time. I totally agree. I wish I would have spoke to a psychologist sooner. I didn't speak to a psychologist until my last year of playing football. And mine was due to the fact of why we're even talking, trying to make sure the transition from playing sports into regular life would be smooth. And it did help. It gave me some objectives that I should look at, and what I should do, and what was suggested that I stay around the sport. So I would say that I should stay around sports, and I should do something that was active and pretty much in an open setting, so I can maintain some sense of good mental health. So I mean, you're knocking it out the park. You're answering questions before I could even come up with the questions. So I mean, this is moving along real quick. Athletes often develop a strong sense of discipline, which we talked about through teamwork and developing a sense of resilience. And how do you think you've applied those skills in your post-athletic career, like in your business, which you kind of touched on slightly, and and when you went to coaching, that also helped. And how did it help you develop leadership and help you through your journey through personal growth? I know I just threw a lot at you, but
that's okay. I took notes. I have to take notes to retain, so I just wrote stuff down.
That's good.
So I'll share the first story that I shared with you, I think, when we met, about my first job outside of being a coach. Because I already talked about like the coaching, right?
Yes.
So I was living in North Carolina. I decided it was time for me to, at that point, I would say, I was in flight mode. Like this was way before I understood all like the trauma and things that triggered me, but I was definitely in flight mode. I was moving on from living in North Carolina and trying to leave some things behind that I guess I wasn't ready to deal with. And I had answered an ad, and it was looking for like athletic minded sports. And I'm thinking, oh, great. This is going to be in the sports arena. This is awesome. I'm going to stay in sports. Like, this is great. It was a bank. It was MBNA, and they had started an auto insurance division. And funny enough, they had one down here in Maryland, but I was living in North Carolina at the time, in Hunt Valley, and then they had one in Delaware. So I interviewed, and it was a third-party company, like a headhunter, that was recruiting. So I had the conversation. They start telling me about the job, and I was like, well, this has nothing to do with athletics. Why did you even like interview me? Because my resume was all about me as an elite level athlete, international gymnast, national team member, and then my gymnastic coaching, right? Because that's what I did. And they said, because of all those things, we want people that are resilient. that have dealt with defeat, that can handle rejection. And so we're looking for athletes because that mindset you can't teach.
Yep.
Right? We talked about this. So went in and I met with the leaders of the bank within that division. They didn't ask me one question about my resume as it related to a job. The only thing they wanted to talk about was that I was an international gymnast. I competed for the U.S. junior national team member, not a senior national team member. Well, talk to me about your injuries and what kept you out, or when you got close to Olympic trials, you got injured again. And then that was the first person ever to do a full in back out off the uneven bars, which is a very common dismount now. And it wasn't even in the code of books. Those are the things they wanted to talk to me about. And what else did I do? Okay, I went on the 84 Olympic gold medal tour with the 84 Olympic team at a couple of places because I was one of the 88 Olympic hopefuls back then. And so, they wanted to hear about all those life experiences. And really but I lost sight of that too after I left there, because that was the only place I worked where that was what they wanted me for. But in that organization, they didn't treat you that way. I was just like anybody else. So I went from being still that athlete to just being one of a, ton of outbound salespeople. But the resilience helped me, stick with it for quite some time. And then in terms of, I went into the corporate world even further in, because I was thinking, that's why I wanted to go into corporate. I don't know. I just thought that because society told me that was the place to be, right? I shouldn't be a coach. I should go to corporate. But then in corporate, I spent years losing myself for the second time. I lost myself first, right? Throughout high school into college, when I became not the gymnast I was. I didn't know who I was. And then in corporate, I would get hired to do jobs. But then when I have a really good intuition and gut instinct, which I now trust, but I didn't for so many years because people would always tell me, you don't know what you're talking about, you're wrong. Well, if I look back at all those things that I saw and said and felt, I'd say maybe I was wrong 2% of the time. So now I look back and I know. But what happened was I would get underneath people's information, their facade, and then they would start to gaslight me because they didn't want me to uncover how they were truly feeling. They wanted others to see them as they were pretending to be. And so they would then tell me that I wasn't, I didn't have the expertise that they said I did, which they actually hired me for. But at that point, I had lost such my sense of self for the second time that I started questioning it. Did I really know this? Did I not really know this? So it wasn't until I left, going through being gaslit and being in like toxic work environments 3 times, third one was definitely shame on me, that I broke free and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do corporate anymore. And little by little, I started to reclaim my confidence. I started to let go of the toxicity and the A-type personalities that were telling me I was wrong when I really knew I was right. And it was through that resiliency. It was through knowing the more I became more comfortable with me, the more I was able to let go of and speak my truth without sounding defensive. Because when I was uncomfortable, when I wasn't sure, it came across as combative and reactive, when really I was feeling frustrated because I wasn't being listened to and I was being told things that I knew were true. I was being told they were false and people wouldn't listen to my perspectives. And so again, back to the introspection, as I started to realize that, and one of my kids' teachers likes to say, don't let the energy vampires take that away from you. So people that are the way I described are the ones that suck the energy out of you because they need it for themselves to make themselves feel better. And so when I found my sense of self again, and I went into my own business for myself full time, and I rebranded and started to channel my great aunt. Her last name was Bloom. That's part of my business name. And recognize that this wasn't just about me helping parents navigate the neurodiverse learning journey. It was helping me help young adults and even middle-aged adults navigate the neurodiverse learning journey, and then helping organizations understand how to work with and appreciate, even if you don't understand, each other that have different neurotypes because I've lived it. I lived it as a young individual. I lived it as a parent because both of my kids are neurodivergent. I lived it being gaslit and being told I didn't know what I already knew I knew, but then didn't realize I knew because I was, being told I didn't know it anymore. Now it's just in circles. And then to helping to educate others. And kids grow up to be those adults. I was one of those kids that knew I had anxiety, got diagnosed with anxiety in my early 20s. But no one really knew what it was growing up. It was like, you're too sensitive, you're too this, you're too passionate, you're too everything. And I was just too much for the world and how the world was told to be, until now I'm like, well, then the world that thinks I'm too much doesn't have to be part of my world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of that stems back to sense of discipline, resilience, and all the things that you were asking, and the leadership that I can now share, even though sometimes it still lands on people as though what I'm sharing is about them when really it was only about me and my story, and trying to help others understand. I call myself a thought partner, not a thought leader. To me, thought leaders spew out what they know and just speak to it. A thought partner wraps your arm around them, shares their personal growth, struggles, and realizations, and helps you unpack your own. And that's how I see myself. And now I realize when people come at me, it's because I've hit a nerve within them that they're either realizing and not willing to talk through yet, or not even recognizing is happening. And so I try to give them space to just deal with it. And if they're willing to talk with me about what that looks like and how it's them and not me, or maybe it's me and them, but it's part of both of us. And that's all stuff that I learned as an athlete, right? There's the coach, there's the athletes, and you have to learn how to work with one another because each of us thinks differently. We train differently. We act differently. We respond differently to different ways of, some people think screaming is a way to motivate. Some people think, it's not. It depends on who you are. And people just need to understand who one another is as an individual. And the quicker we really recognize that ongoing, and I would say like Simone Biles is a perfect example of this. She left the Olympics because she literally could not do it without thinking she was going to get injured. Amazing, like just hands down, kudos to her. Then she comes back. She's married. She doesn't train the 7 hours a day, 6 hours a day in the gym because she's traveling sometimes with her husband, who happens to be a football player, right? And figures all this out and finds a way to come back as the old lady, as she called herself one day, and be another Olympic champion. You don't have to all do it the same way to accomplish great things. And that role modeling that she's bringing forth is just a huge testament to the right mindset, the dedication, and the motivation and the discipline. You can work out half the time and reach the same goals when you get to a certain point.
Exactly.
As an athlete.
Oh yeah.
Because you're being very intentional, and it's quality over quantity.
And you're pretty much fine tuning your performance because you got she has such a great foundation in hours of work that I remember when Serena Williams, she was before she retired, she was doing she was doing pole dancing. Because she used that as a
core strength.
Core strength, and she used it as a change up in the workout, and it actually in those little mental breaks of the basic training methods, I think they expand your brain and they help you. They actually help you actually do a lot more within the sport that you're doing. A lot of football players, they do ballet.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, ballet dancing, especially wide receivers, and some skill players, they'll do ballet. It's a different mode of training, and that's what's fascinating about physical training to me. Can you share any moments where your athletic mindset gave you an edge?
In terms of like business?
in terms of business,
Yeah.
your professional life, it could be anything.
I mean, I would say probably mostly as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, as a parent that was a high level performing athlete, understanding that if my kids didn't want to do it, it was okay for them to take a break, for them to quit, for them to try something new.
Yep.
And in part because, as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, right, that's not how I grew up. You were either in the gym or you were out. There was no breaking. And I know that almost broke me in numerous times, right? We talked about this, not just once. And so recognizing that it is that balance, the mindset, the athletic mindset, getting to know, okay, I'm not always going to say you can take a break. I'll give you a perfect example. This past weekend, my son wanted to break, and a couple times said, I'm not going to do the events in his meet. It was his final state competition for swimming, because he's a high school senior. And so we talked through it, and at some points he's like, I want to go home. And I'm like, okay, well, we're here and we have this and we have 2 days and you can take as much time off. And because he was working with the sports psychologist, because his current coach met him where he was, gave him the ability to say, let's see how you come in. Let's see how you warm up. Then we'll make a game time decision. He was able to get out of his own way and regulate enough. And the 2 events that he had really been training for, he got best times in both of them. And so like he swam more than 2 events, but he's only swimming like 3 days a week right now. And he was swimming 8 times a week. And then he had to start cutting back because he's very academically driven. Not me. He got that from my husband, but he's very academically driven. He got the athletics from me, but not the academic. And so, but me having that athletic mindset and having been through what I went through and growing through what I went through, I was able to meet him. And I have so many parents that say, I can't believe you gave him that much space knowing that you were an elite level athlete. And I said, I gave him the space because I was an elite level athlete. And so that would be what I would say is, and with my younger one, like I let him try different sports and I'm like, go as much as you want. I want you to be happy. So I'll end up doing the same thing with my now freshman in high school. So I'll do the similar modeling for him. But had I not gone through what I went through myself, I may have looked at it very differently.
Big time. And sometimes parents look at it from a selfish standpoint. They look at it from which is even sadder. They look at it from a monetary standpoint. Where I've spent all this money, doing, and that's so wrong. It's horrible.
That was my parents, and I think unintentionally looking back, I think they realize some of that now. But that was 100%. I got a car because I got a scholarship. I got a scholarship, so I had to go to school. If I wanted to leave school, I lost my car and would have to pay through college.
Whoa.
So yes, I lived that life, which is partly why. And I did tilt the boat the other way for a long time.
Oh yeah.
But then I came to a happy medium and I was like, okay, we can do both. We can figure this out.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I lived that. That was my growing up. They had spent so much money that I now had to do it.
But it was an investment that paid off. I'm telling you, I tell parents, you kind of have to look at it because my daughter, my youngest, played club volleyball, and that's like having a third job, 2 jobs in one. So it's extremely intense. But the lessons that she learned from that investment of time and money and resources is priceless.
Yes,
And
I agree.
And it actually helps more than I think parents do. And I encourage parents to, if you have the resources, to get your youth athlete involved in sports. Especially if they have a true love for it. I mean, it makes sense. If you can go back and give advice to your younger self, the version of you that was training, competing, and striving to succeed in college athletics, what would you say?
I would say give yourself enough space and breaks to remember who you are as a person, not just as an athlete.
Mm.
That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that goes into professional too. Big time.
Yes.
Time. It gives you some time to kind of reflect on things and how to improve, and how to actually appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
I totally agree. What lessons would you understand? What lessons do you wish you understood earlier about sports and success and life after athletics? What lessons do you wish you understood earlier?
I think it's really more about how to take what I learned
Mm-hmm.
and the discipline and the things that I had done through sport and how to generalize it.
Mm.
And so remember I was saying there was like this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my gosh,
Oh yeah.
I stretch and then I do
Yeah.
one trick, right?
Yeah.
So if you go back to that story in the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the one thing I wish I had understood earlier, that everything I learned as an athlete could be rinsed and repeated in every phase of my life.
Yes.
Had I just paused long enough to recognize that I didn't become the elite level athlete I did without every single day starting from the beginning.
Mm. Very true. Very true. This is probably the first conversation I've had where the questions have been answered before. But that's the cool thing about it is you've done so much of the work. You are it seems like you're very in tune with who you are and exactly how you got to where you're at. This is one of the best conversations I believe, to help college athletes learn how to become more introspective and learn how to actually apply the horrible, or you want to call them horrible, the bad times, to make yourself a better person.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I wouldn't change all the things I went through as an athlete, the traveling, the international travel, the ups, the downs, the sisterhoods of all the teammates, both club team and national team members. We all still stay in touch. And there is a bond that could never be broken.
That's excellent.
And it is I just got back in touch with someone I haven't talked to since we were 10. And she's, we're both in our 50s now.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally are back to being like sisters. And there's just something about childhood athletics and, even college athletics to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, and if you choose to find a couple of those people and then you remember those things, it's life altering in a great way. And I wouldn't go back and change it.
Mm-hmm.
I would change a lot about what happened and how I handled a lot of it, but I would never want to go back and change the fact that I was an elite level gymnast. It really helped me become the person I am today. I just wish I would have seen that sooner.
That's excellent, Lisa. Tell everybody where they can reach you. I mean, everything's going to be in the show notes, but we're going to, tell everybody about what you do and where they can reach you and how they can actually learn some of the tools from the content that you produce.
Absolutely. So you can find me at journey2bloom.com. My email address is lisa@journey2bloom.com. On LinkedIn or Facebook, it's Lisa. I think it's my maiden name, Lazar, Lazar. Last name is Richer.
Mm-hmm.
And as a neurodiversity consultant, the work that I do, right, is with parents and educators. It's with professionals and it's with organizations all around navigating the neurodiverse learning journey, learning how to connect and collaborate across neurotypes, and how to then bring that forward in collaboration with others to achieve your goals. I recently became an innovator collaboration officer for something called Achieve Quality of Life. I just want to share that real quick as we wrap up here, because it's a platform to connect innovators, and it's a destination for growth and empowerment, but also integrative wellness for caregivers and for their families. Wow. And so we bring together caregivers and innovators in all different facets, some of which we've talked about here today, to help themselves grow and learn. And as a caregiver, whether you're a caregiver as a parent, as a, volunteer, as a nurse, as a teacher, you're still caring for others, and we forget to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a role that I took on as an extension of the work I do in what I call my life's purpose with Journey to Bloom. It's a way to help a much broader audience.
Mm-hmm.
And our founder just had this amazing mission that I thought, if I can help globally people reconnect with their true selves so that they can be better, to know better and do better and help others be better. It's a platform that brings together all of that. So, if you have questions about that, I can talk about that if people reach out to me, even from my Lisa Journey to Bloom, but it all threads together
Mm-hmm.
to becoming your very best self and helping others help themselves in collaboration. And that's why I chose to lean into that business as well. And people say you're crazy, you're doing too many things, but everything threads.
Oh yeah.
It all stacks on one another.
Oh yeah. And it's a process, just like you mentioned earlier. And
Yeah.
I'm impressed with this whole conversation. Seriously, this is
Thank you.
very, very rich, and one of the best conversations I've had. Lisa, thank you for joining me on the Game Ready Podcast.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate everything that you taught, and I'm going to go back through this and take some notes myself, because I think the level of self-awareness and the level of personal development is so impressive. I think a lot of people can benefit from this podcast. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I'd love to stay in touch. So this shouldn't be our last conversation for sure.
Oh yeah, that's a done deal. Because you opened up a few things in my brain where it's a process of me learning too. So Thank you for joining us for the Game Ready Podcast. Lisa, take care, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
You got it.
Bye.
Okay, bye, everybody. Oh shit! What the fuck did I do?
That's a wrap for this episode of the Game Ready Podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like this episode, share it with a friend, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future stories and insights from former athletes who've lived it. We appreciate your support. Stay locked in, stay motivated, and always stay game ready. See you next time.